The Middle East is on fire. Traditional borders are becoming obsolete. The region is steadily fragmenting into factions defined by religion, economic interests, and kinships. But if you thought that 2016 was a bad year, then brace yourself for 2017 as the region will undergo a geopolitical shift. My name is Shirvan and welcome to Caspian Report. If you want to help our channel grow, please visit patreon.com/Caspian Report for more information. We begin our analysis in the heart of the Middle East, Jerusalem. The election of Trump and the fact that the Republicans control the legislative and executive branches of the American government means that Israel has more options to pursue its interests without a political fallout. However, 2017 will be a tense year for the region. Both the Israelis and the Palestinians will prepare for a possible new conflict in June 2017, which will mark the 50-year anniversary of the Six-Day War. Usually, symbolic dates are followed by equally symbolic gestures. Some top officials within the ruling Fatah party have suggested that June 6th marks the deadline for the diplomatic talks. If no agreement is reached, Palestinian leaders may declare independence and try to secure a UN majority, including support from the Security Council. President Trump is likely to veto such an act. Therefore, some Palestinian officials are calling for more action. More specifically, they call for an armed intifada of independence if the anniversary deadline passes. The Palestinian President Abbas is still committed to the ongoing diplomatic negotiations, which focuses on the basis of the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital of a Palestinian state. However, Abbas is increasingly isolated within his party. Ultimately, he may have no choice but to move towards a unilateral declaration of statehood in June 2017. Since Trump's administration is likely to veto an independent Palestine, a violent revolt will remain a realistic possibility. Meanwhile, Iran will hold presidential elections in May 2017. A major topic in the elections will be the nuclear agreement. The current framework restricts Tehran's nuclear weapons program by limiting the production of fissile material. In exchange, a part of the economic sanctions against Iran was lifted. At the present, the European Union, which is a signatory to the treaty, must amend its sanctions through unanimous vote. Meanwhile, the United States can change the sanctions by an executive order. This makes Washington the most decisive factor in the agreement. Both Trump as well as Iranian hardline politicians have criticized the current deal. Technically, everything can happen. Yet, many nations have come to rely on the deal in order to do business with Iran. For instance, multinational companies such as Airbus and Total are seeking to invest billions of dollars in the country. Any major disruption in the current arrangement would upset regional countries as well as the European states and multinational companies. For Rouhani, who will seek re-election in May, preserving the current deal is his primary objective. Much of his economic policy depends on the nuclear agreement. If somehow the deal is disrupted, the Iranian hardline faction could return to the presidency at the expense of Rouhani. Ultimately, the deal is not perfect, but it's working, and it's better than the unknown alternative. For these reasons, it's unlikely that Trump would proceed with his promise to undo the agreement. Next is North Africa, where the status quo will continue. Diplomatic talks in Libya are closing in on a final resolution. However, a unified, cohesive government in Libya is still unlikely to occur in 2017. Most notably, nationalist General Haftar, who commands the Libyan National Army, will strengthen his control over eastern Libya and push towards the west of the country. As a result, sporadic skirmishes between governmental militias and radical jihadists will continue. Yet, Libya isn't the only country that will face a rough year. As the jihadist factions lose ground, terrorist attacks against Libyan civilians will increase. Furthermore, many radical fighters will seek shelter in neighboring Egypt. The leadership in Cairo will have to fortify the country against increased security threats, as well as prepare it for crucial economic reforms. Recently, the IMF approved a $12 billion bailout for Egypt, but the country needs to secure an estimated $21 billion to carry out its reforms. These additional funds could come from the World Bank, the Gulf states, and possibly even China. The thing is, Egypt urgently needs to reorganize the budget deficit, fiscal stability, and most importantly, the social subsidy programs. These reforms will be painful for ordinary citizens, but without them, the country will face an economic crisis. Another country that will start major economic reforms is Saudi Arabia. In 2017, the Saudis will begin the 5-year National Transformation Program, or NTP for short. The NTP forms the first stage within the larger framework of the Vision 2030 initiative. The NTP aims to rebalance the Saudi budget since last year the national budget deficit reached a record $100 billion. In 2017, Riyadh will cut lavish public spending. For instance, the government plans to launch a new social subsidy program which will generate about $30 billion per year by 2020. Furthermore, Riyadh will seek to accelerate privatization. For example, in 2017, Saudi Aramco will prepare an estimated 5% of the company to a public offering, which will take place in 2018. The NTP also seeks to decrease unemployment and improve the domestic industrial military complex. Yet, as ambitious as the plan is, in 2017, little tangible process will be reached. Still, however, for the Saudis, the NTP and the larger Vision 2030 reforms are groundbreaking. For Riyadh, finances will not be the only source of worries. The ongoing war in Yemen is causing a rift between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The state of affairs is such that Abu Dhabi has proposed to relocate the Yemeni government to Aden, which could bolster southern Yemeni separatists. But Riyadh opposes any plan that could lead to the territorial breakup of Yemen. On the other hand, the Saudis also oppose making concessions to the Houthi rebels, who in turn also refuse to relinquish their weapons and territories. As neither side is ready for peace talks, the civil war in Yemen will continue in 2017. Another conflict that will see no end in 2017 is the Syrian civil war. However, to understand the evolution of the war, we need to examine Turkey. Last year, the Turkish leadership launched military operations in Syria, and the intervention aims to combat Syrian Kurdish forces as well as ISIS. In 2017, Ankara will seek to control the region from El Bab to Manbij. But the occupation will draw the Turks into a position that they cannot easily withdraw from. The fact of the matter is that the conditions that enabled the chaos in Syria and Iraq will endure, even if one removes ISIS from the equation. Meaning a post-ISIS region will see the rise of numerous factions that cannot defeat each other. As a result, Ankara will step up its game and claim a safe zone in Syria. Erdogan is unlikely to receive international endorsement for his plan, however he could pursue it anyway and carve out a security parameter in northern Syria. Following this, Turkey could also construct temporary housing and shelter for refugees in order to gain international legitimacy. In preparation for such an objective, Erdogan will closely cooperate with his Russian and American counterparts. At this point, such a scenario is difficult to imagine and justify. It may not even happen in 2017, but it will certainly occur within a few years. From Turkish perspective, it's becoming increasingly harder to stay out of Syrian and Iraqi affairs since Turkey hosts nearly 3 million refugees from these countries. And from the local point of view, a Sunni Turkey is preferable over a Shia Iran as the patron of the region. As the leadership in Ankara adapts a more assertive geopolitical policy, Turkish and Iranian policymakers will collide and seek to undermine one another by exploiting the ethno-sectarian balance in Beirut, Damascus, and Baghdad. This geopolitical race will continue to draw in bigger players such as Russia and the United States. As for Syria, in 2017, foreign intervention in the civil war will be so severe that fighters on the ground will completely lose faith in the international community. For instance, Trump's administration will continue to support Kurdish forces but abandon the rebels in Idlib. As a countermeasure, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey will increase support to the Idlib-based rebels, including the radical elements. Due to these competing policies and mistrust among the fighters, a diplomatic resolution will remain out of reach. In neighboring Iraq, the situation will slightly improve. ISIS will continue to lose ground to the regional forces, especially around the region of Mosul. The battle for the city will be long and costly, but eventually the Iraqi government will recapture Mosul. However, the departure of ISIS from the region may prove to be a Pyrrhic victory for two reasons. First, the gap of power in cities such as Sinjar, Mosul, Erbil, and Kirkuk will force Iran and Turkey into a geopolitical struggle. For instance, Ankara is likely to back the Kurdistan Democratic Party by embedding military advisors in the local military units. Tehran will do the same with the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. Essentially, the intervention of foreign players in the Iraqi battle space will turn the Kurdish groups against one another. Second, as ISIS loses ground, many of its foreign members will seek to return to their host nations. With so many former ISIS members returning to Europe, we can expect more terrorist activities in the West. The situation gets even worse when one considers that in 2017 many European nations will hold general elections. Essentially, the former ISIS members will seek to determine the outcome of these elections through fear and terror. But we will talk about this and more in the next episode. This was a Caspian report by me, Shirvan. I want to thank the following people for their wonderful contributions on Patreon, and if you want to help our channel grow, check out our fundraising page at patreon.com/Caspian report. In any case, thank you for your time and soul. Israel has more options to pursue its interests without a political fallout. However, 2017 will be a tense year for the region. Both the Israelis and the Palestinians will prepare for a possible new conflict in June 2017, which will mark the 50-year anniversary of the Six-Day War. Usually, symbolic dates are Shirvan, and welcome to Caspian Report. If you want to help our channel grow, please visit patreon.com/Caspian report for more information. We begin our analysis in the heart of the Middle East, Jerusalem. The election of Trump and the fact that the Republicans control the legislative and executive branches of the American government means that Israel is followed by equally symbolic gestures. Some top officials within the ruling Fatah party have suggested that June 6th marks the deadline for the diplomatic talks. If no agreement is reached, Palestinian leaders may declare independence and try to secure a UN majority, including support from the Security Council. President Trump. The Middle East is on fire. Traditional borders are becoming obsolete. The region is steadily fragmenting into factions defined by religion, economic interests, and kinships. But if you thought that 2016 was a bad year, then brace yourself for 2017, as the region will undergo a geopolitical shift. My name is Trump is likely to veto such an act. Therefore, some Palestinian officials are calling for more action. More specifically, they call for an armed intifada of independence if the anniversary deadline passes. The Palestinian President Abbas is still committed to the ongoing diplomatic negotiations, which